se gestionó al principio de la pandemia y que finalmente la organización encontró el valor de este programa y creo que ha tenido resultados favorables para poder apoyar a aquellos que más lo necesitan y tratar de poner el piso parejo para la participación de la comunidad de usuarios dentro de la ICANN, sobre todo en los países en vías de desarrollo. Y bueno, pues con este apoyo obviamente también es importante reconocer la evolución que ha habido en la relación que existe entre la comunidad de at large, el ALAC y la junta directiva. Creo que hoy estamos, a mi juicio, en uno de los mejores momentos que hemos vivido en la relación entre la junta directiva y la comunidad de at large y el ALAC. Esto obviamente no es casualidad, creo que es fruto del trabajo de todos y de todas y de la dedicación que se ha impreso en resolver los problemas sustantivos que aquejan a la comunidad de usuarios. Platicaba con los colegas de la LAC en la última reunión mensual a la que tuve oportunidad de asistir, que amablemente me invitaron, pues que este reconocimiento es bidireccional, ¿no? Tanto la junta directiva reconoce el progreso y la evolución favorable de ALAC y de at large dentro de las labores de ICANN, como también at large y el ALAC reconocen esta evolución favorable desde la junta directiva. Y yo quiero invitarlos a que continuemos por ese camino, ¿no? A que continuemos construyendo juntos. Creo que esta es una oportunidad más que tenemos a la mano para poder aprender dentro de los procesos. Me refiero justamente a esta primera reunión presencial después de 2 años y medio de no tener reuniones. No todo será perfecto, seguramente habrá muchas cosas que mejorar, pero aquí es en donde justamente quiero pedirles su apoyo y su sabiduría para poder compartir con nosotros las cuestiones que ustedes consideran que pudieran mejorar, ¿sí? Creo que no es secreto que todos estamos haciendo el mejor esfuerzo para poder estar aquí, para poder trabajar de forma segura, sin exponer la salud de los participantes, siempre poniendo obviamente en la mayor prioridad el que todos estemos participando de forma segura. Y claro, como cualquier primera vez, seguramente, insisto, va a haber cosas que mejorar, va a haber errores. De repente estamos muy acostumbrados a pedir el uso de la palabra con nuestro tent card, ¿no? Y bueno, pues ahora para tratar de proporcionar un acceso equitativo a quienes nos acompañan de forma remota, pues obviamente la recomendación es que lo hagamos a través de el Zoom, ¿no? Que levantemos la mano y que podamos tener una fila de oradores única que nos permita ser manejada a través de Zoom. Ejemplos tan sencillos como ese va a haber muchos, ¿no? Y ahí es en donde justamente creo que podemos aportar como comunidad a mejorar no solo la logística y la planeación de las siguientes reuniones, sino el bienestar de todos, ¿no? El decir, bueno, a ver, hay detalles tan sencillos como X o Z, tratemos de hacerlo mejor. Y ahí es en donde yo, como siempre, me ofrezco a hacer el conducto de comunicación con la mesa directiva. Mándenme un correo, deténganme en el pasillo, platiquemos, etcétera. Sabe que siempre estoy dispuesto y a la orden para escucharlos y obviamente gestionar lo que esté al alcance de su servidor para poder mejorar en todo esto. Y bueno, pues también desearles que tengan una reunión muy exitosa, Los temas que ya describió Martin en su intervención son temas sin duda muy relevantes, no solo para seguir construyendo la misión de ICANN, sino para poder atender las necesidades y las preocupaciones de los usuarios finales. Y no me queda la menor duda de que con su participación, con sus contribuciones, son temas que sin duda avanzarán para el bien de esta construcción de la misión de ICANN. Y felicitarlos porque creo que, como lo comentaba en esta reunión mensual de la LAC, la madurez de AtLarge y la madurez de el ALAC y el trabajo que están desempeñando son la mejor carta de presentación que tiene nuestra comunidad. Habla por sí misma y cualquier duda que se pudiera tener respecto de el valor que aportamos como usuarios a la misión de ICANN queda despejada con este trabajo que ustedes desempeñan. Entonces, por eso, pues mi gratitud y mi reconocimiento hacia ustedes y, por supuesto, el ofrecimiento de continuar sirviéndoles desde la Junta Directiva y de estar siempre disponible para poder atender y ayudarlos a gestionar lo que sea necesario para facilitar la labor tan importante que desempeñan. Muchas gracias, Maureen, y les deseo el mayor de los éxitos en esta reunión.
Thank you so much, Leon. And I think that from the contributions that we've had from our board members, you can see how much we are valued. I feel very valued. I think that that's, it's great for our community that we actually have the support that we do. And of course, Leon attends every LAC meeting that we hold. So, we know that, what is actually sort of raised as being important to the LAC is taken on board, and that's really awesome. So I think what we can now do then is to move on to the sessions that we're actually going to be providing. And I think I have got a slide that's sort of like that can be raised somewhere. Okay, just to give you an idea, and I hope it's the one that that has. Oh, sorry. Sebastian, we have a question or comment, and probably in French.
Dankjewel, Martin. Muchas gracias, Léon. Maintenant, je vais parler en français. Je voudrais, au nom de Rallo, vous accueillir en Europe. Et je suis très content que la première réunion qui se passe en présentiel ou en hybride, comme il faut dire aujourd'hui, soit en Europe. J'espère qu'elle va démontrer que nous sommes capables, en tant qu'organisation, de faire ce travail.
I am speaking now because I think it would be a good thing for at-large to evolve. And that when we have a meeting on a continent, that meeting is organized and chaired by the ALAC chair, but also by the chair of the region where we are present. I think it is an important element of the bottom-up model, and that it would be interesting to do it that way. I wanted to also pose a question. Martin introduced a session that I will be in charge of in terms of the multi-stakeholder model and the crisis. And there is a crisis that I would like to raise. The information that I have is that we can't both have Ukrainian interpretation, which seemed to us an obvious need in the current situation, and in the other languages supported by ICANN. It seems that the technologies that we have cannot be paired. But it's a little bit like saying, if you have IP addresses, you can't have domain names and vice versa. So I do hope that we can get to a solution in order to make the two systems work together in an intelligent manner. And now, on a personal note, if you allow me, I want to make sure that I tell you all, it is indeed an issue, but it's not as bad as we might think. I do have cancer, prostate cancer. This is something that is quite complicated at this time. Urello is not doing very well, and I am not very well either. Thank you, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you for that intervention, Sebastian, and we will you want to?
Thank you, Sebastian. It's very sorry to hear about your health. All sympathy and empathy. On the matter of organizing this, all the input to improving the systems, just like the improvement that you suggested, are explored and developed as we speak as well. All input on that is welcome. We have ICANN 74 feedback at ICANN.org for specific suggestions. And even during our workshop, we experienced how, for instance, the sound pairing was improved as we noticed. So let's learn from that. And thank you very much.
No other hands up. Can I continue? Okay. All right. Thank you. I mean, as you heard, I'm sure you're very much aware that the meeting's very experimental, and we're going to have to adjust to a lot of things to take into account the safety issues that have been raised several times by org and the board. So we just ask that you please try to be understanding and patient, and it'd be very much appreciated. So let's get started on the on what's on top for at large this week. And what I first wanted to do was to raise the sessions. I attended 2 sessions yesterday, and I just thought I just need to give you some feedback on it. The first one, of course, was our SOAC chairs meeting that Jonathan and I attended, and it was really just it was part of our traditional introductory session that we have had over in other face-to-face meetings, where we were basically just sort of giving each other an idea of what was on top for each of our constituencies. And so I was actually able to sort of like present the sort of things that we were going to be doing. Plus, we also sort of like talked about, how each of the different sections of the ICANN community actually prioritise their work. And so that was actually sort of like quite an interesting session. And so we were able to sort of like just basically explain how at large was organised in regards to the 3 work streams and how those work streams worked in trying to coordinate things to do with policy, outreach and operations. That sort of like took all the morning, but in the afternoon I attended a session of the DNS Abuse Institute Advisory Council, which I'm a member of. And I think it was a good follow on from the session that Graham Bunton took with us at our last ALAC meeting, where he did highlight that NetBeacon was going to be presented at this meeting, and how it could be used by end users to report incidences of DNS abuse. And one of the things that they are doing is, of course, that the program is being sort of like it's being launched. But what they do need is feedback on the usefulness and user friendliness of the form that they're actually using, because they're expecting people like us to be able to report any issues of DNS abuse that we might be experiencing. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll be forwarding you the form that is actually going to be used, because they need to get some feedback on, whether you think it's the questions are asking the sorts of things that you're concerned about when you're actually wanting to report any abuse of your websites or your emails or whatever. So that was something that I thought was a way in which we could actually help NetBeacon be an effective tool for reporting DNS abuse, and that we could be contributing to that as well. So that was yesterday. And going on to this week, what we have on this list is the sort of like the activities that are going to be on during the week. Martin's already mentioned some of them, but of course what we normally do is to actually have those who are in charge of those sessions to present a short summary, promotion, to encourage the people who are actually sort of like either here in person or remotely participating. And I see we've got a really good remote participation sort of like list of personnel being with us today. So our first session, of course, apart from this one we're engaging in at the moment, the next one's going to be the at-large regional leaders, which is going to be led by the chair of the region, Sebastian.
Yeah, we will have a meeting where we will discuss with the leaders of all the RALOs on site and in their home or office, different topics. The first one will be around the RALO ROPS, rule of procedures by the RALOs. We thought that the work done by the two working group on the mobilization, both ILS and individual, will be useful to be discussed. And if we have to change the rule of procedures, maybe we can do one single document and put it in all our the 5 RALO ROP. We will discuss about work stream 2, where we are and how we can handle continuous improvement program proposal by the ATRT3. We will have how we can better coordinate the RALOs and what is the situation of outreach and engagement. And the last point will be about where we are with the General Assembly, as some were postponed, and if it will happen an at-large summit number 4. We need to take that into account in the calendar. That's some of the issue we will discussing. We have an item on the election, but you already know all the results. Therefore, I don't think we will spend 5 minutes on that. And you are all welcome to participate, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. Seems like a pretty full agenda there. Our next session, of course, is a policy session. So that should be interesting. Hadia.
Thank you. First, Sebastian, I'm really sorry to hear about your health condition. I wish you all the best. Hi all, this is Hadia Ninoi for the record. So malicious activities on the internet that result from compromised websites or maliciously registered domain names equally threaten end users. Our session focuses on the role of at-large in mitigating DNS abuse. We start the session with Leon Sanche, ICANN Board Vice Chair. Leon will discuss the challenges and the efforts exerted in that regard. After that, we have Joanna Kolesa. Joanna will give us a summary about at-large efforts to evolve the discussion, raise awareness, and help protect end users. After that, we will have our RALO chairs discussing with us the role of the RALOs in organizing the community in order to start a DNS abuse mitigation initiative. And in order to help keep end users safe. Finally, we will have Graham Bunton, the director of the DNS Abuse Institute. Graham will show us a tool that helps reporting DNS abuse incidents. Maureen already gave us a brief about that. We will also try to explore how the Institute could work with at large to help protect end users. So the session is happening today at 1300 UTC. And if you're attending or registered to attend in person, it's at the ALAC room, the Mississippi room. Thank you.
Thank you, Hadia. Interesting session and something that we're, DNS abuse is very important to us. Coming on to Tuesday, therefore, we've got the ALAC ESAC. Did we, is Andre available? No? Andre? No? I thought.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Andre, let's have you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Andrei Kolesnikov, remotely participating, and just quick few words about the tomorrow's session between ICANN and ALAC. So there'll be a couple of topics and additional topic if we have time. So the topics are ICANN 121, which is a new. It's not published yet. I'm not sure the logistics would be positive to us to speak about it, but there might be some update about the 121, which is routing security with Rusmundi. There'll be SEC 120 input on ID and variants, which are a long-standing topic with ICANN for many, many years. There'll be a quick presentation of addendum to SEC 114, which caused a lot of questions past year. There'll be, as said, discussion with Steve Crocker and CAP update from Jim Gowen and Matt Thomas. Also, if we have time left, we'll have, we have time. I mean, there'll be a lot of the hot topics from ALAC side. Of course, there'll be a response to DNS abuse questions, and which is always popular and always causes a lot of attention from both ALAC and the SEC. That's my short agenda presentation for tomorrow joint meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's really great to have Andre able to participate in this week's session with from Russia. Okay, so moving on then to the next session, which, yes, is the one that Martin mentioned earlier, with Cheryl.
Just waiting for a microphone or three to be put off. Cheryl Langdon for the record. Right, well, tomorrow's plenary, and I do hope you've all pre-registered and you're going to be coming into the main room. We will, of course, in this hybrid model, be operating the plenary with an overflow room, but I really think, and I think, Jonathan, you'd have to agree with me, that the benefit of being in the prime room with our moderator, well, actually, we're not quite sure about our moderator, are we? With our facilitators, being able to interact with the audience and have a great deal of Q&A, there is going to be minuscule amounts of frame setting and setting the scene and commentary from a few people. The design of this is, however, to be a conversation as much as possible. So opinions are being sought, responses are welcome. Yes, we have some experts, subject matter experts, but they're not going to be showing and telling material for you to be digesting. They're going to be saying, this is the level setting and where we are now. These are the programs and the pilots that have recently been run. And I don't have to go through those with you because you've all been kept up to date with them. Right? But we will obviously need to keep the rest of the audience up to date with the pilots on the priority settings that's been done in recent time. So everyone will be given that foundation material. Then we want a conversation. And that's why it's really important that you are in the room, all nicely separated, as it was this morning. I don't know how many of you did actually go to the new GTLD one this morning? And I know I saw a few of you. You'll know the setup actually, I think, will work fine. But we're not having people talk from stage. We're having people talk from the microphones, with the exception, as I say, of a couple of subject matter experts. So make it one to be at. It really should have opportunity to hear other voices and opinions, and most importantly, bring your own to the fore. That's it from me, Maureen. Back to you.
I look forward to be in that session, by the way, tomorrow. And sorry we have to leave now, but it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to see more of you during this week.
Likewise, it's been an honor as usual. It's good to be home with you guys. So thank you, and we'll see each other around.
Okay, well, carrying on, therefore, our second at-large policy session is with noisy, is with Pari and Olivier. Pari here? You sure?
Listening to the... You heard me mention it, right?
Hello. Go ahead, Parry. I can hear you. Maybe Olivia could speak.
Pari or Olivier?
Okay. Yeah, hi, everyone. This is going to be interesting.
Go ahead, Olivier.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure that I was going to be the person actually introducing this, but because I thought that Parry was in the room, but that's fine. I'm, as you can see, not in the room at the moment. So we do have a session that will deal primarily with the regulation that is happening, the discussions on regulation that is happening in Europe at the moment, primarily the NIS2 directive, and also one relating to DNS for EU, a domain name system that is meant to be specifically catering for Europeans, run by some contractors of some sort and with some ability to block sites, etc. Anyway, some interesting things that might appear to work out on paper, but that might be a lot harder to actually set up and make happen in the real life. So we'll have some good discussion on that, and some key stakeholders that will be able to provide us with an insight on how this is how this has affected them and how this is likely to affect their organization in the future. Parry, do you want to add a couple of more things? So I'll be dealing with the sort of remote participation, and Parry will be dealing with participation in the room. So she's really leading this discussion.
Thank you, Olivier. I think you mentioned all of it. What I would add is we will start by looking at the strategy that EU is planning for the future, looking at the motivations and how the whole strategy is shaping, and then we will focus on the two topics that Olivier already mentioned. Plus, we will be having four speakers explaining the reaction from an impact of this strategy and initiatives on values part of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question from Holly.
Can you hear me? I mean, does this go through okay? Olivier, I'd like to know, do you want discussion for other jurisdictions? Because this is a particular area that Australia has had some interesting, if not ineffective legislation, but certainly some more effective legislation, particularly in the area of online privacy and legislation that deals with perhaps revised definitions of consent, revised definitions of what an IP address is. So will that form part of your discussion? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, Holly. Olivier Tapenablan speaking. And indeed, the examples we're taking and the focus that we're starting with is the EU, because that's where things are really happening at the moment. I know that there's a lot going on outside the European Union, and there's if you want, what's happening in the EU might be reflected in the rest of the world as well. We're focusing with Elena Plexida, who will be providing us with an exact details of what's happening for ICANN with these things. We've got Paulina Malaya, the policy director for Centre. Centre is the European Association of top-level domains, European top-level domains. So Paulina is going to say how that's likely to affect their members and their organizations. We have Lucien Castex, a representative from AFNIC, the French .fr registry, and Chris Buckridge, whom many of you will know, who is working for RIPE, as an advisor to the RIPE NCC managing director, and RIPE deals with the allocation of IP addresses. What's happening in Europe is likely to also be showing similar challenges elsewhere. Because we have very little time, unfortunately, it's a 45-minute session, we'll have to focus quite a lot. So, Holly, it will be great to hear some of the experiences you have in your region. But we'll try and open the floor as early as we can so as to see that. But obviously, the dimension here, because we're in Europe as well, is primarily European dimension.
Thanks.
And thank you too. I think this is a great time for, getting some extra contributions to the discussions that are being held. Our next item was the bilateral between the ALAC and the GAC, and that was to be done by Joanna, and I know that she was caught up in a fellowship discussion and obviously hasn't been able to be released. But what we can do is continue on, and she may turn up before the end. Otherwise, I can go through the program that's actually been set up for that. So let's have Jonathan and the closed generics.
Thanks, Maureen. Jonathan Zook here. We, as the at-large, have begun kind of a series of conversations about sort of unfinished business with respect to subsequent procedures. We raised important issues about applicant support, and we also did a session on closed generics because it remained unresolved coming out of the subsequent procedures working group. And so if you recall that session, it was kind of a debate between Kathy Kleinman and Mark Trachtenberg. We had a little bit of like an audience meter where people could vote, based on how they were feeling on the various arguments. But what the board has done was kind of what we were after them to do, which is reject the non-decision and turn it back to the community for the compromise rather than asking them to play the role of Solomon on that issue. And so the ALAC has a standing position on closed generics that dates back to the 2012 round that was very much in alignment with the GAC position at the time. The at-large volunteers participated in the subsequent procedures discussions about closed generics, and a couple of them Alan and Greg Shatton in particular were involved in the creation of a compromise public interest proposal that didn't end up going anywhere, but may get new life as a result of this requirement by the board that the community set its own policy, shockingly enough. And so the purpose of this session is really an internal discussion for us to get a little more nuance into our positions about closed generics. So we'll begin by trying to introduce the issue, help people understand the questions that are being asked by the board and what's necessary to create new policy. We'll talk a little bit about the proposal that's on the table from 2020, and just have an open discussion about how this community feels about the issue of closed generics and where the nuances are. What is the extent to which we're stuck in the position that we took in 2012, or is there a compromise position that we're able to support as those conversations take place with the GAC and the GMSO. So that's the purpose of the session. It's not a presentation of experts. It's literally a participation session in which we do our best to move toward a consensus position on closed generics that can act as an input into the community discussion that's going on shortly to come up with a compromise. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, next is Shern. Is Shern online?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone, and of course, good to see some of you remotely. Of course, happy that the face-to-face is resuming gradually and finally. As usual, AFRALO does hold a session called the AFRALO ICANN session at every ICANN meeting. And of course, we're doing the same at this one. And the agenda is usually pretty much standard, except that we would be doing a summary we'll be hearing from our webinar co-chairs, Bram and Tijani. We'll be talking about the webinar series which we've been holding since I think last year. And of course, we would normally finalize a statement on the topic, the role of AFRALO community in mitigating DNS abuse. DNS abuse has been the hot topic relatively within ICANN, and within AFRALO, we chose that topic as what we want to discuss upon, and of course, have a final statement on. We have actually initiated the process a while back, where we actually have drafting teams that actually came up with the draft, and of course, with contributions from the community within AFRALO, and the draft statement is going to be presented during that meeting. We normally hear from our guest speakers as well, from the ICANN Hague, Oran, and of course, we'll be hearing from Afrinic CEO as well, especially for those who are interested in understanding or knowing what is the status of Afrinic, which refers to the various happenings there. And of course, we are also going to be hearing from our own Leon, and of course, his other colleagues on the board who are from Africa. The session is going to happen in Alak Room. I hope I'm right. And I'm sure the Alak Room has something it's called. I'm remote here, so I really don't know what's on the door as a sign. But of course, for those of us who are remote, the link to join the Zoom call would be on the agenda, and I look forward to having you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shern. And I know that the AFRALO AFRICAN meeting always has a great sort of like a policy statement that they present each meeting, which is quite a credit to the region. And the final sort of like session that we actually have for ICANN 74 is, of course, the emergency session that Sebastian is taking.
Je vais parler en français, merci beaucoup.
I will speak in French. Thank you very much. So after the reflection that we carried out on the Ukraine situation, or rather the war, I shouldn't say the situation, but the war, it is important that we do something, especially since we are in the region where the war is happening. I know that unfortunately the war is not just limited to this area of the world, but it is important that we speak about it here. So we invited the person in charge of the media ALS Europe, who is in Ukraine, come and talk to us, to exchange with her. We have the honor to have a certain number of other speakers from different regions who will talk to us about their experience, what they did, what they gathered in terms of information regarding the crisis situation in Asia Pacific, Jennifer Chang and Cheryl Langdon-Orr. For Africa, we have Mr. Fuzulani. I don't know if someone from South America or the Caribbean would like to come and speak. You can come to me and let me know. Thank you to Eduardo Diaz to have immediately answered yes to support the initiative. Foneralo Leon Sanchez will also be present to explain what the board did in this area in terms of the Ukraine war. And of course, we will have a discussion with the participants. The goal truly is to try and figure out if there are tools, situations that can be common to different crisis situations. So yes, we will not talk just about the war. We will also talk about other components, climate change, for example. It might seem to be climate change, but it's also due to human activity. And so how can we use knowledge on the one hand to set up certain things that are already being done elsewhere? And I would like to end on something that is very important. Very important. I really wish for this meeting to be interpreted at least in English, French, Spanish, and Ukrainian. It's not one or the other. It is not because we have the Ukrainian war that we should agree that we can't have the other languages. Otherwise, what will happen is that we will have participants who don't understand what is happening. I would really actually like to have the 7 languages. Thank you very much. I am at your disposal to move forward on this subject whenever it's convenient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. Yes, we can only do what we can do, and we can ask. Okay, now the only other session, I mean, apart from the wrap-up, which is of course our the final session that we hold, which is a debrief of the week's program. We have the board chair and Leon and I think Edmund's coming. We have sort of like a what was get their impressions of the meeting for the week from them, and be able to contribute anything that we sort of like want to suggest to the board while they're here. And I think Joran is actually part of the team as well. So that's the wrap up, and then we start looking at ICANN 75. So start that already. And but before we close off, before I sort of pass over to Jonathan for the talking points, I just sort of like wanted to mention the session that Joanna is taking with the GAC, because it's important. That session is quite important. We've got some important issues that we're contributing to and actually having a discussion with the GAC members, which is something that's taken a long while to develop, but I think we're starting to get some traction there. And the first session is going to be on universal acceptance and ADNs, and Satish is going to speak on behalf of the ALAC and will be responded to by Nigel Hickson, who's been a very supportive GAC representative in the UK, and he's so that discussion will take place. The second topic is at-large cooperation at national level. Good practices from each of the committees, and we're going to have Johan Helsingis, who's the chair of the ISOC Finland group, who's going to explain how the multi-stakeholder mechanisms work in grassroots level in Finland, and the responded to by the GAC representative of Finland, who is going to respond to that. So that should be interesting. The next issue is the geopolitical issues in advancing the multi-stakeholder model, the role of governments and civil society volunteers, discussing the recent issue of internet governance and the way to improve multi-stakeholder participation mechanisms. And we will have Marita Moll and Joanna sort of like discussing it from the ALAC perspective, and Jorge Cancio, the GAC representative of Switzerland, and they'll be exchanging information on, he will be providing some information on recent developments at the global level, including the declaration of the future of the internet. So we'll be, I mean, there are some very interesting discussions going to take place at that meeting, so I really would encourage you to attend. So I think that's us for the week, and an important part of this introductory session is, of course, the talking points, which is sort of like looking at the ALAC position on various issues, and I pass this over to the Vice Chair of Policy, Jonathan Zook.
Thanks, Maureen. I don't want to listen to myself twice. It's great to be here in person, and it's interesting because the talking points had their genesis at an in-person meeting because they were about preparing people for conversations that might take place over meals or in corridors or outside of these official sessions. And in addition to that, perhaps the possible intervention in a session or something along those lines. And so it's been a very evolutionary process, and we went all virtual. Things changed, and I made a habit of trying to mix text and video when we were virtual, and now that we're in this weird hybrid, I don't even know what I should be doing to make this presentation more entertaining. So at this time, I decided to do away with slides. There's a document that you are free to read at your leisure and distribute to folks. It'll be made available on the website, and you can read it, but it's very prose heavy. It's not slides in the normal sense of the word, and I really just wanted to maybe take a minute to talk to you about how to think about where we are on some issues, and perhaps some discussions of how that might manifest itself at this particular meeting. Maureen mentioned at the beginning that we participated yesterday in a meeting of SO and AC leaders, and those are interesting meetings because it's a very informal group in many ways. It's not a group that has any formal meaning inside of the ICANN context. It's just people with a formal role getting together. And we were sort of asked what our policy priorities were. And in an attempt to be kind of pithy and boil that down, I really boiled it down to two things. And one of them is subsequent procedures, and the other is DNS abuse. And we're involved in many discussions inside of the ICANN community. But those are really our priority issues, and many of the conversations that we have are in fact in one form or another about those two issues. So subsequent procedures is important to us for a couple of reasons. One is it presents a kind of an opportunity, a new round of applications for new strings and new TLDs, presents an opportunity for the greater inclusion that we've always sought in the DNS, particularly from less represented and underserved regions around the world. And so the way that those underserved parties might better participate in the DNS and through a new round is a few things. One of them is applicant support, something that's largely regarded as a failure in the 2012 round for a number of reasons, some substantive and some not. But mainly because it was kind of rushed at the very end, and it was a pretty anemic program that got created and not particularly well evangelized. And so it was worked on quite a bit by the Subsequent Procedures Working Group, but there's still work to be done on applicant support to make sure that real goals are set, and we've had a session on that. And so there's some talking points in here about applicant support and the need to expand on that and make sure that it's effective. Another area for inclusion is community priority evaluation. In other words, how do communities win out against these, the folks that are prospecting, if you will, in the TLD space? How can legitimate communities get their own domain as opposed to 3 big companies grabbing all of them is what sort of happened in the last round. And so we continue to focus on that area. Another area of great importance to us, relevant to subsequent procedures, is the issue of internationalized domain names. Because that's another area that's not regarded as a great success up to date. And what is it that needs to be done to make internationalized domain names more successful? And so there's a lot of discussions that are taking place about internationalized domain names, about variants within rules for internationalized domain names, etc. And we are actually involved in a poll that's just going into the field here any moment, if it hasn't already. That's going to be a poll, the first ever activity by ICANN in India, polling into India, and we'll be polling sort of the Hindi belt in Hindi about international domain names, and trying to really reach out to individual end users to gain an understanding of the role they might play in bringing folks onto the internet that aren't otherwise. So folks that have non-Roman keyboards, for example, are a prime candidate for use of IDN. And so that's why it seemed like a good population to begin with our little pilot project we got as part of an additional budget request from the board. So this topic of IDNs is another area of subsequent procedures on which we're focused. The conversation that we're going to have later about the policies around closed generics is another area related to subsequent procedures that has an implication for individual end users. The argument goes that if you allow there to be closed generics, if you allow Amazon to have .book or .books, that end users will be confused into thinking that it's all books and not just books that are on Amazon, for example, and that will create a competitive advantage, end user confusion, etc. So that's the main argument behind the, as to date, prohibition on closed generics. And so it's very much an at-large issue, which is why we're fighting so hard, and why Justine is fighting so hard for us to be part of what was meant to be a bilateral discussion between the DNSO and the GAC on this issue, because it really is an individual and user confusion issue. So as you can see, there's a number of things that we're discussing that are really end user issues that fall under the rubric of subsequent procedures. So this particular new round presents an opportunity to address some of the shortcomings of the last round, to get at some of the communities that were sort of left out of the last round, and to make sure that the program is more effective going forward. It also is an opportunity to prevent some of the shortcomings with respect to DNS abuse as well. I mean, it's generally regarded, and it was the findings of the competition, choice, and trust review team, that the safeguards were a failure. And so, the things that were put in place to kind of make the internet safer as part of the new round generally didn't work. And so what needs to be improved there? And so ongoing pressure within the subsequent procedures effort effort related to those safeguards and these registry commitments that they make associated with their application also matter to individual end users. So subsequent procedures might very well be the biggest issue in front of the at-large community for the near to mid-term. Now, the other issue that we hear about all the time, and part of why we hear about it all the time is DNS abuse. And again in the meeting yesterday, I made the point to the SO and AC leaders that sometimes it is the role of the at-large to beat the frying pan with a wooden spoon. Right? To just make enough noise that people will bring their heads up from their desk and pay attention to a topic that has been neglected. And I think we've been extremely effective at bringing DNS abuse to the forefront of discussions inside ICANN in a way that it never has been before. And so we should be very proud of that. What now happens, though, is a great deal more nuanced set of conversations about DNS abuse. Now that everyone's woken up, there's 10 separate initiatives that are going on related to DNS abuse. And we need to meet these initiatives where they are. In other words, our own original rhetoric from 5 meetings ago or 6 meetings ago about DNS abuse is not going to be as effective as speaking directly to the GNSO small team on DNS abuse when they request from us what the GNSO in particular can do through the PDP process to address DNS abuse. It behooves us to meet regularly with the contracting party house working group on DNS abuse to gain better understanding on how we can cooperate on educational efforts and informational efforts associated with DNS abuse. Maureen is participating on the advisory committee for the DNS Abuse Institute that is also trying both to do this universal complaint system that's called NetBeacon that was announced yesterday, but they're also working on DNS statistics reporting and sort of output and better data with respect to DNS abuse, and making sure that our priorities are built into what that looks like, I think is going to be important as well. So now is the time to get very specific about this issue of DNS abuse and where those conversations are taking place and trying to participate in them individually and, as I said, sort of meet people where they are. So DNS abuse continues to be a very big issue, but it's no longer a broad abstract issue. At the last meeting, there was a plenary about the... am I going too fast or something?
You are talking about a document, we don't know it, we don't see it.
I'm not trying to use the document, I'm trying to just have a conversation.
Yeah, but it will be better if we have what you are talking about on the page, no?
Generally not.
Sorry.
We've had this conversation before, but don't read, just listen. Hide the document, please, because it's not useful to read and listen at the same time. So meeting people where they are is what's critical on this issue of DNS abuse. And so we need to make sure that we understand the difference between maliciously registered domains and hijacked domains, because the actor in each of those cases may be different. And so we need to make sure that we're aware of those nuances and no longer perceived as just beating the pan with a wooden spoon. And so as you look through this document after this conversation, look for those nuances and look for ways to participate in these meetings as they happen as they go along. So we can read the document together, but it's not really designed to read together. It's really just read the document, and you'll see some of the background information and some of the talking points associated and the ALAC positions associated with those topics. Yeah, go ahead.
Jonathan, just a question. When you say IDNs, should we expand that to universal acceptance? Because if we're talking about another round, but the industry actually hasn't configured itself to accept, or a lot of the industry hasn't configured itself to accept new names, isn't that in one sense, that's an issue for the people who spent money and their names don't get resolved. But in another sense, it's useless names that we're led to believe work and they don't.
Thanks, Holly. It's a very legitimate issue. All also that's something that, as we've made advice to the board with respect to substantive procedures, we're looking for some movement on universal acceptance as well. That is an area that is difficult for us to complain about the level of effort that's being expended. It's a very difficult issue, but at the same time, our request that some movement happen may be motivational to those who would like to see a new round happen sooner rather than later to also participate in that effort. And so that's the subtlety there. It's less of a why aren't you doing anything, and more of a, you know, do we need to set some specific objectives and have the whole community focused on accomplishing them. I thought that was an old hand, Sebastian, so please go ahead.
Thank you. No, old hand, I take it off. Thank you. We talk about tools developed by other people. Olivier Crépin-Lambillot just remind me that during one of the monthly roundtable organized by Uralo, we had a presentation of a very interesting tool made by our LSs from Belgium, the internet chapter of Belgium. And Olivier will talk on that during the session. Then go there. It will be very interesting to see what we are doing and not what others are doing. Thank you.
Which session is that? Is that the Uralo session or
No,
Olivier's session?
The one on DNS abuse,
Okay.
where he's talking on behalf of Uralo on that very specific topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Sebastian. Other questions or comments? My goal was really to simplify down and not have a list of 20 things that are going on here, and really focus us in on what are the two big priorities for this group. And I believe that it is substantive procedures and DNS abuse, and they are somewhat intertwined, because a new round is also an opportunity to see enhanced cooperation from a number of parties within the ICANN community that want to see a new round happen. And so there was a great deal that happened in 2012 as part of a new round, and I think we hope so here as well. We believe that there's lots of things that need to happen on DNS abuse, not the least of which are changes to contracts to make them more enforceable, more specific, and therefore more enforceable by contract compliance. And those conversations, I think, are beginning to have legs as well, and there's beginning to be some buzz about looking at those contracts and renegotiating some aspects so that contract compliance has the ability to make these rules apply to all of their contracted parties. Yeah. They're requesting that we raise our hand in the, yes. Sorry, Carlos, go ahead.
Thank you. Several things in Spanish, please.
My idea, the idea of my participation right now is to say I feel really good after 10 years of not coming to ALAC on a face-to-face basis. This is my third participation in ALAC after going through the GNSO in 2012. And now I am again in this face-to-face situation. I'm really happy. I see very well-known faces, also some new faces, and they all want to participate, to get engaged, to work. And I see also some issues that really matter and that are really important for end users, such as the DNS abuse. I am really willing to engage in this issue. So I'd like to ask Hadia, Maureen, the possibility to participate there. I see Maureen there also being involved in the council of the DNS Abuse Institute, and it is essential for end users to be able to see the relationship between this issue of cybersecurity and the European security rules that also have an impact, GDPR, for example. I think we are seeing the emergence of a number of issues that are really important for end users. And I also think, as I was saying in the Nairobi meeting many years ago, when I was the chair of the participation and engagement group. We need to do a lot of outreach about this issue to be able to generate the necessary knowledge from the end user, and this knowledge needs then to create the engagement. That is, someone who knows about this can participate, and if that person does participate, they generate the commitment. This is a necessary genesis that needs to happen, and I believe that with these issues that really matter for end users, we can reach out to them. For many years, I saw ALAC being a group of people who know, who have the knowledge, but they are closed in the sense that they don't really reach out. Not everybody knows about this situation. Nobody knows about us, our work, this very important work that we do here. So I think it would be very interesting to spread out these issues and to generate this participation and commitment when we're back. And with respect to the subsequent procedures, this new round that we want to open, I think this is super important because today, most internet users, end users, do not know that there are 1,650 generic domain names, at least in Latin America, at least in my country. And this creates a very big confusion. Sometimes they believe that domain names are the traditional GTLDs. The 22 first ones we saw, and some even believe .com is the only one that exists. So we need to explain this situation to them. And I believe we are at a moment where these issues are very sensitive to people, and we should be able to do good outreach and be really useful, and not only useful for the ICANN org. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carlos, for your take the headphones off. For your great intervention. I encourage you to participate in the CPWG, the weekly CPWG call, where a lot of these things are really discussed in detail. So let's now that you're back, let's get you hooked up with the right places for some of these conversations and some of these outreach efforts. But I agree completely that the infrastructure we have in place with the RALOs and the ALSs is at this point still a relatively untapped resource for outreach and participation, and we need to find a way to more effectively use that channel both forward and backward, up and down, however you want to describe it. And I think that should definitely be an objective going forward. Satish, go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is Satish for the record. So first of all, I find these talking points really, really useful, which is the reason I was asking for the document. The document is important because as a chair, we need to share the document in multiple forums after this meeting is over. So it's important to have the document, and I see that in chat, it will be shared with us. I also agree with Holly that while IDNs are part of policy, and acknowledging that there's a lot of work currently going on, that the community is spending effort on the IDNs. But from an end user perspective, there could be a feeling that the full benefits of IDNs may not be realized until UA is also in place. Now, it would be therefore useful to look at the findings of the survey that was mentioned to confirm this position. Fundamentally, if UA is seen to be required to get the full benefits of IDNs, then we should be considering that also under our radar. Thank you.
Thanks, Satish. Are there other questions or comments going forward? And we have the Skype channels on these topics, and I highly recommend using it as conversations come up. Let's keep this conversation about talking points and positions a dynamic one, and make sure that people stay informed about where conversations are migrating as we go through the week. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Maureen.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a really interesting sort of like conversation. I think that Jonathan's presentation motivated people to sort of like contribute, and I think that this is important for us. For the beginning of this meeting, it's one of the opportunities I think that being together. I mean, we could probably do something similar on Zoom, but I don't think it would be, sort of like, it's probably as passionate as it has been this time. And I think it's all to do with the fact that we're here together, and I hope that we can, just take note of what happens during the week, bring it along to the wrap-up session. That's going to be the time when we actually do the, like a debrief, but really, make it a meaningful conversation during that one as well. So enjoy the rest of the week, and you've got all the sessions that we're presenting that are important to us, but don't forget that there are other sessions also happening in some of the other sections of ICANN, and do people have access to the Google Doc where other topics are actually sort of like
Hi, Maureen. This is Heidi. So we do have the workspace that all of the sessions are on, if that's what you're asking.
I'm asking about the sessions that are on in other areas of ICANN.
So again, the key sessions are on the at-large workspace, and then the ICANN full schedule will have all of the others.
Yeah. I was just sort of like thinking more of the Google Doc where Gizla actually put some of the others. Anyway, they're in the main sessions on the website. Have a look. So, while we're all here, really make the most of being here for the next 3 days, 4 days, whatever, however long it is. But enjoy yourself, and don't forget to say hi to everyone. It's sort of like I'm sort of like just looking around. People I haven't said hi to yet. I will get to you soon. Okay, and I formally end this session.
This is a test.
What was that? Oh. Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This session is closed.
Welcome back.
Thank you to everyone, and